You know the old story. Jews are invaders into the state of Israel. They just got there in 1948. Wait till you see this video, produced by and distributed by the Muslims in the 1920s, declaring the Jews are the original settlers in Israel. I'm sure you've heard this hundreds of times, and you'd asked me about it yesterday, and I'm going to give you some of the evidence now. You'd asked me about some of the proof that the Jews just didn't get to Israel, 50, 60 years ago, that they didn't show up in 1948 as colonizers. They didn't steal the land from the Palestinians. That didn't exist in 1948, right? That was a made-up name given to the Arabs that lived in the area by the KGB and Yasser Arafat in 1965, before the 67 war, before there was any occupation, right?
Well, some of them try to say what the Romans came in and they call it Palestine, just to get under the skin of the Jewish people, right?
That's actually true. They called it Syria Palestinia to take away the Jewish identity. They actually called it Philistina, after the Philistines, who were very anti-Jewish in the Roman times.
Right.
And that became anglicized as Palestine. But the truth is, until 1948, the whole area was called Palestine, and their flag was the same as this flag.
Yeah.
The Mogen David.
What was it, Barry? What was it called before Rome decided to try to, the Israelis and that?
It was called...
Before they called it Palestine. What was it? What was it called then? Right.
The land of Israel.
Yeah, but they, you know what? They don't want to acknowledge that.
Let me show you.
Want to acknowledge that.
Let me show you a couple of facts. Okay. First, what I'd like to show you is this. You'd asked me about this. There are hundreds of these pictures you can look at. This is a silver coin. On one side is an inscription with a cup and the caption in Hebrew, Israeli shekel, which is what the money is called today. And the letters next to it, right, which is Shin and Vav in Hebrew, stands for second year. It is the second year of the great revolt of the Jews against the Romans in 67 and 68. That coin is over 2,000 years old.
How much is it worth right now?
What's that?
How much is it worth?
Oh, who knows? You could never sell it. It's in a museum. There are hundreds,
priceless,
and hundreds of these coins. The other side of it has the script and the Hebrew words on it describing the Jewish priest, right, who was the religious director. This is Hebrew from over 2,000 years ago when the Jews were there fighting the Romans. They're not colonizers. They've been there for 3,000 years, continuously. Same language, same religion, same capital, same belief system. They are the oldest continuous people with a common language, a common belief, and a common location in world history. And yet, to some people, they're colonizers. Now, let me show you something from the 1920s. This will blow you away on the same subject. The book explains itself. Watch the video.
Good evening. So I'm here with something incredibly special. This is a brief guide made in 1924, printed here in Jerusalem, to Al-Haram al-Sharif, which is the Temple Mount. This book was published by the Supreme Muslim Council. This was the council from the Waqf that would have been in charge of the Temple Mount at that time. And this book was given to all guests and all tourists who would have been visiting that site. And the amazing thing that we can see when we look inside of this book, when we're talking about the history of the Temple Mount, the history of this holy and important site for the Jewish people, and you can see this very clearly here, printed by them at the time, is you'll see exactly what they talk about. They talk about this being the site that connects to Solomon's temple. In fact, it says the identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. Even further than that, it says that this too is a spot, according to universal belief, and which David built there an altar to the Lord. This book, printed in 1924, would not be printed today. And the reason why is it shows the undeniable proof that the Jewish people have to this land. All of this stuff that we see today in the media where people are trying to talk and dispute our connection was written by them. Once again, published by the Supreme Muslim Council in Jerusalem in 1924.
There's your proof.
Wow.
That book is 100 years old. It was distributed, if you tried to go up on the Temple Mount, it was written, printed, and distributed by the Muslims who were in charge of the Temple Mount 100 years ago to say this is Jewish land. And it says in the Muslim scriptures that God gave the land to the Jews. And
I've actually read that. And it blew my mind.
It's in the Quran.
Yes, it blew my mind.
The idea that this is colonized and stolen is insane. It's just making up history. And it's like Goebbels said, Hitler's propaganda minister, if you state the lie strong enough and often enough, eventually people begin to believe it. And that's the talking point. These are colonizers who stole the land. And when you ask people, what about the Jews in the Bible? They still live there. The temples that are dug up and the coins and the pottery and the scrolls, like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were written at the time of Jesus, right? That talk about the Romans conquering the Jews and the fighting back and the Essenes, which probably Jesus was one of their sect, right? The very, very spiritual religious Jews. Nobody knows for sure, but that's one of the theories. That didn't exist. And Yasser Arafat comes out and says, which is just, it's so insulting to Christianity, that Jesus was a Palestinian.
They're saying
didn't even exist until 1965.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people on X saying the same thing. And they're saying, you know what, Barry? They're saying that the people that Moses led out of Egypt to the promised land are the Philistines, the Palestinian people in the Gaza. I'm like, you know what? That's the most idiotic thing ever, because you don't see all nations trying to destroy them. No one is trying to destroy them. No one is trying to destroy them, but they're all trying to destroy the Israelis in Israel. Make that make sense.
You can't. It's just hatred. It's just literally hatred. And I'm glad I by the way, I didn't send you the other 5-6 pictures, which you can just go look up Israeli coins from antiquity. There's hundreds of them, hundreds of pictures from 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, in Hebrew, describing their revolt against the Romans or the Assyrians or the Greeks, right? This is 600, 700, 800, 1,000 years before Islam was even invented.
And you know what? The reason why I was asking you a couple of days ago about the coin is because on X, and I'm referring to X a lot because they share all this propaganda on X, that they keep showing this coin from I think it was 1947, and says Palestine on it. 1947. So they keep trying to say that, oh, it was Palestine before 1948.
It was, and it was Jewish Palestine. It had its money was the shekel, and it had a Magen David on it. This one on the money, and it was in Hebrew. That's Palestine until the modern country of Israel was founded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Israel became a nation in 1948.
Bingo.
How come Palestine never became a nation? They didn't want one. That's right.
They've been offered it 6 times, and
they didn't want one.
You know why? If you're the leader and your name is Arafat or Abbas or Sinwar, they're all billionaires stealing money from the European idiots and the American idiots that give them money. It's much more profitable to be a victim than running a country.
Yeah.
Every one of them are billionaires. Because
if you become a country,
are starving.
Yeah, because if you become a country and then the people voted for you in your country or supporting you in your country, and things are getting better in your country, then they're going to start questioning, how come all these other countries look better than our country? But since they're not a country, there's like really no one they can blame. But even though they voted in Hamas, they still don't want to blame them.